Hey guys, it's Jared, back from a relatively long hiatus, so I'm terribly sorry about that. Uh, Frankly, it just kind of comes down to whether or not you have enough time, honestly. So, clearly, things are starting to open up again, so you'll probably see a few videos trickling out over the holiday season. Maybe not a lot, because it is the holidays, but could be a couple. Now, as you can very well see, tonight I'm joined by a very special guest, Alduin, the World Eater, Great Dragon from Scrolls Skyrim. So if 90% of you aren't already playing it right now, that was your first introduction to the bugger. Um, and from a gamer perspective, I think if I'm gonna have downtime and I'm not gonna be sitting at a table, that's about the kind of game I want to be playing, as opposed to something that's a little phoned in or whatever. I don't game a lot, so that's the closest I can get these days, and also this handy dandy channel. Now, before we get started, I would just like to go ahead and say a little word on gamer community solidarity. This is a very specific shout out to Tim over at Samwise RPG, and he was kind enough. He saw my Dark Races video. He toughed his way through that one, and he had come across the core rulebook. Now, without even I don't know, without even the expectation of reciprocation of any sort, he sent it. He sent it out to me. He just wanted to know if I wanted it. I said, yeah, sure, and gave him my address. And, again, trust and solidarity. So, there we are. The Dark Conspiracy core book. So, I can give this a once through and actually understand everything about that source book. It's been sitting on my shelf for the better part of a decade. So, much appreciated, Tim. And, I find, now this might be just me, but the way I was raised, you do not, if somebody does something grand for you, somebody does something that you would say would be above and beyond, and you're not sure how to reciprocate, um, my father always told me, or should I say tells me, because it's not gone, but he always has told me and still tells me that if somebody does something like that for you, and it's not like you can just hit the back, it's not like somebody lends you $5, you can just give them $5 back. This is something that, he genuinely saw a void. He genuinely, Tim, I'm referring to, believes in the gaming community, and he wants to, if he sees a hole that he can fill, he's obviously there. So, thousands of miles may separate us, but he's a good guy. And you can't really reciprocate so easily for something like that. So, the very least, as my father always told me, was that you have to say thank you. So, Tim, thank you. Because I know it wasn't exactly the shortest trip. I did see the return address, so just pay attention. One of these days, you might have a creepy package with wires sticking out of it from some furry Canadian up in Edmonton, Alberta. So, thank you very much, Tim. And just kind of just gotta say, it is in a bit of rough shape, as you'd expect it to be. But you know what? It's not bad for secondhand gaming supplies. I'd pay 20-30 down at the local gaming shop, local gaming reseller for this sort of thing. And, it looks like a well put together book. The kind of which I can only hope I can churn out myself as my gaming book becomes a reality. Uh, well, it'll become a reality soon, hopefully. For those of you that didn't know, I don't like to plug it that much because it will have its own YouTube channel one day, and I'm going to be sick of hearing that. Sorry, Alwyn. I'm going to be sick of hearing that about that book. by that point, if I keep talking about it. But just to give you a bit of an update, I still have the same comic book quality artist working on my project, but because I simply cannot afford a team of artists, and I basically had to contractually sign on with this one guy, and so he's doing my entire book, stem to stern, at a. Let me go ahead and put it to you this way: he's a professional graphic designer and amateur comic book artist. He would have charged me if this were work related, and then somewhere in the neighborhood of about 15 grand. Now I'm not going to tell you what I paid, but I can tell you it was a fraction less. And I mean a fraction of a fraction less. It's an equal exchange between him and I. His portfolio will be stuffed, mine and my book will get done. This is the exchange. And you have to find these sort of relationships, I find, in the gaming community. Not just when you're making a book, but like with Tim, for example, this sort of solidarity of people that are like-minded and, kind of like an old world way of doing things, where everything is exchange of one service for another. It's a trade off in some way. And I know this stuff still goes on, clearly, but I find it's less and less so. It's all about a monetary exchange versus, there was still money exchange in my case, but there's more of because somebody will be benefiting on both sides. There was almost like the money became second, so if he really wanted money, he probably shouldn't have signed off with me on the amount that he wanted, but he did, and this is where we're at because we have this understanding between peers. And I hope that you as gamers and you as GMs, book creators, book writers, have these sorts of relationships, because they're really going to help you. And to be quite honest, they're the kind of relationships I think you need to start out and survive in this industry, in this hobby. You need to have you need to have an understanding, because if you're just dealing from a purely cut and dry, white collar corporate frame of mind, without also getting that sort of community involvement, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be messing with a lot of bureaucracy, and as a result you're going to get a subpar product. And I think to an extent, I know everybody has their own shortcomings about it, misgivings about it, not shortcomings. The game itself, I think, has shortcomings, but modern Dungeons and Dragons, right? Say what you like. I think if you get a bunch of guys together at a table and play, and they enjoy themselves, that's really the best you can do. But the main point I'm trying to make is that in the case of Wizards of the Coast now, because they are owned by Mattel, a super corporation, and although they have some talented, creative people getting out there and doing the product for them. In fact, look at the work Chris Perkins has done for them as far as a design lead and just kind of face of GMing for the company. Look what they've done there. But you see, there's still some sort of corporate tie-in there. There's somebody in a corporate frame of mind that's pulling the strings. And I think as a result, the purity of that game is going to the wayside. Now, that corporate backing is getting a lot of exposure for the game. A lot. And it's putting it out in the market. And that's what I think corporations should be able to do. But as far as kind of dictating the direction of a game, and because it all does come down to dollars and cents, the way they sort of dictated the way Dungeons and Dragons is going, I think it's kind of hurt the game and the industry. Have you seen any imitators of 4th edition? If you have, write it down in the comments section. I'd love to hear about them. But you got to go back to, I won't say the indie days because it was never really indie. I mean, it was for about half a second, but let's go back to the time in which Gary Gygax was starting out with, let's go chainmail, even before Dungeons and Dragons was a reality. I mean, he started out with his own company, and I mean that game had holes in it. We all know it, just like the fourth edition one does. But there's something else there. You know what I mean? Like, I never really even came into the hobby in first edition Dungeons and Dragons, as you very well know from my previous videos, and even started with Dungeons and Dragons. But when I played D&D, it was AD&D second edition, and I saw then kind of what was going on, module by module as the years went on, and then building up towards the end and the beginning of third edition, I started to see this sort of change of hands. Now, I got older. Maybe I was just more aware of it as I got older, but I did see something deteriorate in the fabric of the game. So, but not of its players. Do not think for 1 minute that I think anybody who plays any of these versions, first, second, third, fourth, Pathfinder 3, any of these, or the like Pathfinder, I consider an offshoot. A very successful offshoot, but an offshoot. Anybody that plays these games is still keeping the hobby alive. Despite how corporate it's become, the hobby is still staying alive. So, that being said though, I think if it's at all possible, if some of you are out there doing exactly what I'm doing, you're creating role-playing games, if you are manufacturing is a harsh word. It brings on imagery that I'm not comfortable with. If you are designing, creating fun for a table of people you've never met, keep going. And whatever you do, try and keep it that way for as long as you can. Because eventually, you're going to get successful. And I'm not even kidding. I don't care what you're putting out. I mean, somebody created Pirates vs. Ninjas, and some German guy who used to work in a bank created Settlers of Catan. And I bet you at first he thought, well, what the hell? But now they're a success. And for most of them, they carried on with it. Steve Jackson Games is another example. He's kept everything pretty much in-house. And now we've got Munchkin, a very popular game. But the fun remains. What I'm trying to stress is that it's just like anything, whether it be a movie franchise, a book series, comic books, anything. The fun starts to be choked off in a way. There's still a supply of it, but it starts to kind of be minimalized as more and more corporate influences come in. Because what happens with, the low expectation of monetary compensation, of course, supercharges the fun level. Because if you're gonna go, it's basically like, alright, maybe I'm getting a little philosophical on everybody, and I'm terribly sorry. This could be the most boring video you've seen from me in a while, and not exactly my best return, but take the gaming industry a little bit like an end of the world scenario. Like right now, we don't see an extinction event happening for a very long time, so people get complacent. They're not really worried, right? They're not. So today at work was kind of a blah day, and you've just basically come home, sat, plopped down in front of the couch, and done nothing. Like me, maybe you played Skyrim for like 16 hours. Well, that was a weekend, but you're not worried because you got tomorrow. I think the gaming industry is a bit like if you found out that like a nuke was going to go off tomorrow and just wipe everything out. So you try and ramp it up. Basically, as an indie game, you try and have as much fun as possible because tomorrow this could all be gone. But once it seems very realistic that you're not going anywhere, I find the fun gets changed out for sort of a monetary foundation to keep things at an even keel without those initial worries of yesteryear, which is fine. That's how you run a business. But that's kind of where I'm going. Business leads to sort of a diffusion, it's a dilution of fun. I mean, it's just like when you're getting older. Maybe this is where I'm going. This past week, November 2 weeks, November 23rd, I had my 30th birthday. Now I know you guys are, all the identity thieves out there are thinking, oh, that's 1981. I know his name, I know his birth date. Ooh, I got him. Well, good luck. I'm broke. But no, I turned 30. Big 3-0. Now, some of you are probably already there. I know Sean Connors over there in England. I know he's probably 30 plus. Not because he looks like an old hag or anything, but he's got a couple kids. Responsible job, speaks very eloquently. I think that only comes with experience. Or you were the douchebag in high school that read the dictionary every day, but they sound a little bit different. So I'm thinking Sean comes with experience, that intelligence, that experience that exudes from that wisdom. So at 30, I now kind of see things from a different perspective. I mean, the number is purely arbitrary. Many people, I think it was Ben Franklin said that like a lot of people die at 21. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but he basically said that there's a lot of people that just stop being alive at 21. And then they live to like 80, so they're just crotchety. But the gaming industry is exactly like getting old. It's the child in you becomes stuffed further and further down into the center of you because responsibilities come at you, adult responsibilities. Now, some people have a good way of managing this child side, this not child side, but innocence, sort of ability to imagine with of course, the reality, the harsh reality of the real world and growing up. And that's kind of where as you can see, I have coping mechanisms for the reality. I game. I find that gamers are probably one of the few groups of people that still have an actual set pastime to just take time out to imagine. I mean, you probably don't see it that way, but think about it. That's what you're doing. You're sitting down and you're imagining. It's a shared daydream with some of your best friends. And we're one of the few groups that do that. A lot of people, they go start up fantasy baseball or something. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's still the exact same thing as gaming. But it's still kind of got that adult tinge to it. Like, this is a reality-based thing. You're not going to see a bunch of gamers sitting around role-playing their favorite baseball players. Unless, of course, those baseball players just so happen to be in the Intergalactic League and, part of the game was actually, getting killed by the other team. See, there you go. That's how gamers spend it. But the gaming industry is like that. It starts out in small, childlike, full of wonder and imagination, lots of fun and everything, and then as it gets older, sort of begins to get influenced by outside things, the harsh realities of it. So if you can hold on to that childlike fun and imagination, I think you got something. But as you can very well tell by the ticker on your YouTube channel, on my YouTube channel, it's getting close to about 20-minute mark. So I'm going to cut this one short. Well, I'm going to cut this one. And that's really not short. Again, thanks, Tim, for the gaming supplements. courtesy of your own charitable goodwill. Where there's a Tim, there's a way. And I'm going to get back to the harsh realities with maybe a little splash of escapism, just to just to put that medicine down. So, until next time, guys, keep the dice rolling. Cheers.